In this massive box right here is the all-new Arctic Extender case. Now yes, Arctic, yes, the same brand that makes these Arctic MX4, Arctic MX6 thermal paste tubes, they've now branched out into making cases. Alongside with their great AIOs that are well known for being top of the class in performance overall in the market, yeah, they've now branched out into cases. So this is the Arctic Extender PC case. Now thank you to Arctic for sending out this PC case and AIO for me to showcase today. And I'm just going to give you a quick little overview of how the case looks, what features it has, and yeah, how it performs. And I'm going to be building a system in it so you can see how it looks overall. So let's get into it. So as you can see from the box, you've got 3 140mm reverse blade fans and 2 120mm on the back. And yes, it is that fish tank design that we also love so much. Now one thing you will note as soon as you try to build it, or even get it out of the case, is that it's actually really heavy. So I'm going to have to do this on the floor. Now in terms of packaging, it comes in 2 nice bits of styrofoam, and it's pretty solid, like it's not going to move anywhere, and it comes wrapped in plastic, of course. Now having your screws in this nice little box is really nice because it means that it's all organized, and yeah, you don't have to dig around in a plastic bag to try and find out which screw is which. So that's a really nice feature from Arctic. Now looking at our case, you can see that it's a pretty standard fish tank design. So you've got the 2 panels on the front and on the side, and then you've just got this frosted sort of look on the glass just because of the plastic, but I'll take that off in a moment. Then taking a look at the top of the case, it's like this little grid design, which I actually quite like, and it's going to have plenty of airflow because it's got this nice little fine mesh, but it's actually not too fine, and it will definitely suit AIO as well. Then looking at the ports over here, you've got 2 USB-A's, 1 USB-C, and 1 headphone microphone combo jack. And then our power button, just up on the front. It's actually quite an easy peel to peel off the plastic on the glass. And yeah, you can see inside it actually looks really awesome. There's still plastic on the inside, so I'm going to take this off. Now unfortunately it seems that this thumb screw isn't actually held captive, so you will just have to keep an eye on where it goes, but it actually stays in pretty well. Then just taking the side panel off, it is actually very heavy. It's quite a thick piece of glass, which is really good because you don't want a thin piece of glass on such a big case like this. Yeah. Now turning towards the inside of the case, it's actually got this really nice glass front panel on the front of the case. Now this is held in by sticky tape in the beginning, and you can remove it if you like. It just slides out like that, but it just has the Arctic logo. But I'm going to leave it in there because it actually looks quite nice, I think, and it adds a nice little touch to the system overall. It might come a little wonky when it's just sitting in there taped in, but you can just fix it up like I did then. You'll also note that by default this case comes with a PCIe 4.0 riser. Now I did get some notification from Arctic that this is a PCIe 4.0 riser. And the reason why they chose this was because they measured RTX 5080 performance and said that there wasn't a noticeable difference between PCIe 4.0 and PCIe 5.0, but obviously there are some use cases, like with a 5060 Ti 8GB, where that would make a lot of sense. But in this price bracket, it doesn't really make sense because you'd probably be going with something higher than 5060 Ti. So yes, the PCIe 4.0 riser is more than acceptable in this case. Then if we look at our fan layout, we've got 3 140 reverse blade fans. Now these are all ARGB, obviously. And then you've got in the back 2 120mm. I imagine they're of the same color tuning because obviously you want that to be standardized, and I'm sure Arctic have done that. Then in terms of cable management, you've actually got a fair bit of choice. You've got rubber grommets here, 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 and here. But you've also got some nice little holes here, down here, and some spots for SSD drives on the back. But overall, the inside of the case looks really good. And the color matching for most things is pretty good. All I'll say is the riser looks a little bit odd here. It looks a little bit yellower, but you won't be able to see that because when you have your GPU over, it'll be hanging over that and you won't be able to see it. So yeah, I really like the inside of this case. If you want to remove the top panel from the top of the case, all you have to do is at the back there's a nice little handle that you can grip and it just pops off like that. So this is really handy if you need to install your AIO. And then you've also got this adjustable bracket for the AIO that you can move backwards or forwards depending on what size AIO you have. So if you have a 360mm, you can move it and keep it in the same spot. But if you have a 420mm AIO like I do, All you have to do is unscrew that, and then slide it that way, and then it'll fit nice and easy. If you want to remove the front panel glass, all you have to do is take off the top panel and then unscrew it on these 3 screws here. Now I actually like that mechanism because it does give you the security and guarantee that your case won't just have the glass fall off the front like some others could potentially using a lock-in mechanism. I'd rather have the screws on most of the glass panels. So that's really good from Arctic, and I really like that. Now turning towards the back panel, you can see we do still have this lattice design on the back. I quite like that. So there's plenty of airflow if you are to mount some fans or an AIO in the 11140 spot. And then our back panel is just held in by 1 thumb screw, and this one is not captive, just like the other side panel. So in the back, you can see we've actually got some really nice cable management. We've got Velcro tie downs everywhere, absolutely everywhere. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you literally probably won't even need any zip ties because you're going to have all these slots. Also, what's quite nice is that the cables are actually pretty well managed from the beginning, and that everything's sort of set out and organized for you already. So you don't have to do that manually. Now you've actually got some slots for some SSDs here. You can fit 3 here, 1, 2, 3, just like that. Or you can mount some RGB connectors or RGB housings and hubs. In the bottom, we've got our hard drive bay, and you can fit 2 hard drives in there, which is really quite nice. And you can also switch that out for fitting SSDs. Turning towards the back, you can see that we've got our normal cutout for our I/O, our power supply, which is actually mounted on a bracket, which is quite nice because installing that is going to be much easier if you just slide in the bracket. And then you've got our 2 120mm fans sticking out the back with, again, that lattice design giving a lots of nice airflow. So yeah, you can see that the build quality and design and layout of this case is actually really quite amazing. The build quality is just, like, it's really good. It's really solid. So what I want to do now is I actually want to build a system in it and see how it looks overall. So let's do that. Now as for the parts we're going to be using, I actually picked up a i9-10900K, 32 gigs of Corsair RGB Vengeance RAM, DDR4 obviously, and a B560F gaming Wi-Fi motherboard from ASUS. Now this is a really good combo, and for 350 Australian dollars, it's going to look really great in this system. Unfortunately it is black, but you know, what do you do about that? Then for the power supply, I'm just going with the normal 650 watt, and for the graphics card I have a RTX 3070. Now I was going to spray paint it white. I'm just going to put it in the system and then just see how it looks, and then see if I need to spray paint it, which I feel like I will. I've already masked off the front, but yeah, I couldn't really be bothered to spray paint it today. But we're going to build the system now. Now before I install the motherboard, I'm actually going to remove the PCIe bracket, just because that's going to give me a lot more wiggle room to move the motherboard into the case rather than having to work around it. And this is how I'd recommend you do it as well. So all you have to do to remove the vertical mount is just unscrew these 2 screws at the side, and then it should just slide out of the I/O cover. You also have to unscrew this one, which is held on by a standoff. Then it can just slide out like that. Now what you do have to do next is actually unscrew this big long standoff, and I'll explain why in just a second. So because this standoff is actually screwed into one of the motherboard standoffs, what you have to do is put the motherboard on, and then you screw this over the motherboard, so it's going to act as one of the screws. So yeah, as you can see, it's actually a really easy install for the motherboard, although you will have to hold it in place, as there's no sort of like standoff with a little nubbin for the motherboard to sit on, but like it still stands up really well. And also one thing to note is that the I/O shield is actually really well cut out. It's not too finicky, and it's not hard to put your actual I/O shield in there. The motherboard install has actually been really easy and accessible. There's been no obstructions whatsoever, and I haven't even needed to use the manual. Now obviously you might need to if you see the PCI bracket and you might think, oh, let me install it without it. But unfortunately there's no paper manual, but I do empathize with what Arctic are doing. They're saying it's, you know, more sustainable for them to just have an online PDF, and they do have an online PDF which you can access via their website. So yeah, I actually do kind of agree with having a digital manual, because physical manuals, while they're good, a lot of the times, like, you know, they're just kind of a waste of paper, and then they just take up room in your cupboard that you never look at again. So I do actually quite empathize with the whole online manual sort of thing. But yeah, you really don't need a manual at all to really operate this case, especially if you've built in a computer before. But even then, even without it, I reckon you could probably figure it out. So yeah, really well done for the instruction level by Arctic. And what's really nice is actually being able to reach in through the PCIe bracket cover, because it all comes off, it's actually really nice and easy and accessible to hit these screws over here, which usually it's not easy at all, especially if you don't have a magnetic tip screwdriver like I do. Now I do realize that I've made an error in screwing that in, but I'll just unscrew it in a second. And then all you do down here for the PCIe screw for the riser cable, all you do is screw in the standoff as you would the normal screw, and it just goes in there and just acts as a normal screw. Now obviously it probably doesn't have that much of an impact on the rigidity of the case, just because those bottom screws don't do as much of the heavy lifting as these top 3 screws do. Now Arctic did send over their 420mm AIO, so what that does mean is I do have to unscrew these screws and slide it over in the bracket so that it fits the 420mm AIO. Actually no, you just take out the bracket completely and then you've already got your screw holes mounted for you. So that's really easy. You will just want to keep that somewhere safe so that in case you sell the case or need to replace it with a 360mm AIO, you can easily access it. Now with regards to the AIO, this is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 420mm AIO. It is the most performant AIO on the market, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double check. But yeah, it looks really good, performs really well, and it's a really chunky boy. I know you can't see that on camera properly, but yeah, no, it's a really great AIO. Also, something that's really good about the AIO is actually the fans are already pre-mounted, so you don't even have to do that, which is just such a nice thing for them to feature. I will say, however, when they don't include a manual for an AIO, that's a little more disappointing, because AIOs do typically need you to look at the instructions. Now you do have to be aware when you do buy the Liquid Freezer 3 Pro, you will have to be aware that it doesn't actually support any other sockets other than AM4 and AM5 and LGA 1700 and LGA 1851. You can get an adapter for LGA 1200 and I believe some earlier Intel sockets, but you do just have to keep that in mind when you buy the product because, you know, it doesn't support it. Now unfortunately, when I got reached out to, I didn't inform them as to what socket I would actually be using, so I will have to just wait and order a adapter. But if I was doing the buying process myself, it says pretty clearly on their website that you do have to watch out for compatibility with some motherboards. So yeah, you definitely will be able to spot it if you're buying it. And on websites like ScorpTech, it will have it clearly listed as it does. But again, the case is flawless to build in. That's just an AIO thing, and that's just something very particular to my case. So yeah, I still very much endorse both. Also, in terms of the power supply basement, there are some concerns about airflow that have been floating around online. However, there is ample room because the power supply is mounted on some rails. There is ample room for airflow to get in, especially given that there is air coming in the front and then it kind of just wafts around in there. So yeah, there's not really any need to worry too much about that. In terms of cable management, the process should be pretty straightforward overall. I can't imagine it's going to be too difficult. When you're beginning the cable management, it's actually quite nice to just separate the normal cables that you plug in with the fan cables. So that's what I'm just doing with the Velcro right now, so that I can keep some cables out of the way while I work on others. But the Velcro is very handy and it's very nice to use. And after a little bit of movie magic, this is what the PC looks like. It looks amazing in my opinion. The case just really gives it that nice, clean aesthetic. The all-white design, the RGB, it all lines up, all the fans sync up. It looks amazing in my opinion. The RGB on the CPU cooler, the ease of installation of most things, it's just quite amazing, really. Yeah. Especially that front little design, it looks really quite cool in my opinion. One of my favourite things about this case is probably just the overall look of it. It's nice and clean, it's simple, it's not overdone, but it works. And it looks just, yeah, I just have no words for it. You can just look at it yourself. But what's a case if it doesn't perform well? Well, let's see that right now. Okay, so running Fortnite at 1080p with probably high settings, the i9 10900K and 3070 do really well. And you can actually see that our CPU is at an amazing 59 degrees Celsius, 60 degrees Celsius, even though it's running at 136 watts. That is some amazing performance from the CPU cooler. It's honestly quite amazing and is a really performant cooler. Additionally, our GPU is nice and cool at 56 degrees, which is really nice to see because you're getting a good balance between the two. And I'd say this is probably a mid-range sort of wattage output for a system, so this is handling it really well. And also, Fortnite runs really well. Like, the 3070 and i9 1000KF is still a very competent combo, even at 1080p high settings. Now running Cinebench 2024, we are sitting at 212 watts and we're still only at 76 degrees. That is amazing from this CPU cooler, and it definitely could do well with a modern CPU like a 14900K and do just fine. It'll probably sit around 84, 83 degrees. So yeah, definitely a great result. 76 degrees, 77 degrees, something like that. 216 watts from the CPU. It's really quite amazing. Yeah, definitely would recommend this CPU cooler. So yeah, overall it's a really solid case, and I would recommend it if you were looking in this price range of around $349. Obviously there are other options out there, but this is still a very solid pick for the most part. So overall, this case for 349 Australian dollars is really quite a solid pick. You get 5 ARGB fans, a nice fish tank design, and a very easy to build in case. And then you can also pay a little bit extra for the CPU cooler, which costs 269 Australian dollars normally, but it's now down at $239 on sale right now, as of the 5th of October 2025. Yeah, both are very good options, and I would recommend them. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you like, subscribe, do all the usual things, and as always, I'm TechBiz, and I'm out.